perhaps. All right, so we are now recording, just so everyone is aware. So we are so excited as we have seen LISC and Anthem, and in partnership with the City of Indianapolis, the Division of Community Nutrition and Policy, as we have had the opportunity for a public announcement about the partnership with Anthem and Anthem Foundation and LISC to launch this initiative. We're really appreciative of not just the funding, but also the support that Anthem has offered the Indianapolis community to do this food equity work. And we are really eager to share information with you. We have since then had an April 1st, on April 1st, INRC partnered with us to present a training on how to build a collaboration within your neighborhood and then prepare a proposal in response to RFP. And we're able to share that on our website as well, so that others who weren't able to attend that night can access that information. We want to give, as many community partners an opportunity to participate in this initiative. And then on April 8th, we released the RFP, really reaching out as a call to a collaborative proposal of interest to the initiative. And we're going to dive more deeply into that this evening. And wanted to just then tonight is, after you've had a chance to review that RFP and perhaps the portal, dive more deeply into the details of this initiative. We've had questions trickling in since the initial community announcement, as well as the INRC training and the release of the RFP. And so we're hoping that this evening's meeting will allow each of you to ask some questions, to gain more information, but know that if you do have questions that bubble up after this meeting, we are so happy and eager to answer the questions that you might have. Both INRC can help with some consultation. We're really thankful for Maury and his engagement to provide technical assistance in developing a response to the RFP. I'm more than eager to share more details about the initiative. And then there's an advisory as well that's really eager to support the community as you all come together in a collaboration to develop a response to the proposal. So with that, I just want to do a few introductions. We're not going to take time to introduce each participant, but a couple folks who I want to acknowledge. First of all, my colleague, Emily Scott, our Senior Director, Program Officer for Economic Development at the LISC office. So she's going to be monitoring the chat as well as admitting folks in. So if you do have questions, we'll be stopping periodically throughout the presentation to answer the questions that have been submitted in the chat. And then at the end, we'll have opportunity that if your question wasn't answered throughout the presentation, then we can open up mics and have some additional question time at the end. So we're excited about that. So thank you, Emily, for helping. As well, I'd like to acknowledge Councilwoman Lakeisha Jackson is on the line as well. So she's driving, so she's not able to unmute herself, but we're thankful for her attendance and support of the initiative, the work that she's done to address food access throughout the Indianapolis community. We're really thankful for. And then as we dive into the slide deck, I'm going to share a lot of information in the slide deck. This is a deck that I certainly can share, and a lot of it is also covered in the RFP. But as we go through some of the slides, there will be other folks who we will introduce through the slide deck. So with that, without any questions, I'll go ahead and dive into our deck here. So I'm just going to take a little bit of time just to explain. Some of you may not be familiar with LISC in relationship to this initiative. We are partnering to build economically resilient and healthy neighborhoods, and love the visual here of a community garden and community members in the garden. That is a piece of the very complex puzzle that we're hoping to develop in a local food system community action plan. And just really excited, the word partnering is really critical to the success of this initiative. Our mission, being a national organization, this is our national mission, that together with residents and partners, LISC forges resilient and inclusive communities of opportunity across America. We are to build great places to live, work, visit, do business, and raise families. I promise you I'm not going to read every slide, but I do think it's critical that we read specifically the mission of LISC. So the way that we deliver this mission is by providing capital, technical expertise, training, and information. And we support the development of local leadership. It's a critical piece of this initiative, and the creation of affordable housing, commercial, industrial, and community facilities. So we'll definitely be looking at that opportunity in the initiative over the next 3 years, developing businesses and jobs. In short, we help neighbors build communities. This initiative is helping us and allowing LISC to deliver their mission with the support of $2.5 million of funding from Anthem Foundation. LISC will invest in a place-based systems approach to increasing equitable food access and food security in Indianapolis neighborhoods. Along with collective partners, we have initiated a streamlined RFP process in which a diverse advisory will select one community of collaborators for this investment. And we say one because we believe that this is the first, and we'll talk about how we are looking to scale this initiative beyond one neighborhood. I'd like to start with just describing a little bit, and if you've read the RFP, you've seen a little bit of information about this, but would love to invite Natalie Cooper from Anthem to share a little bit about why Anthem has chosen to do this investment in Indianapolis and why this is an important initiative to Anthem. Natalie?
Thanks so much, Shelby. So as Shelby has stated, we are partnering with LISC and the communities within Indianapolis to bring this RFP and much needed support to an Indianapolis neighborhood. So this is an initiative that we started back in 2019, where we really partnered to identify some of the barriers that were impacting the city of Indianapolis. For those who don't know, this is where our headquarters building is. And so we wanted to ensure that we were making a difference where we were serving. So as this started in 2019, it kind of went fast forward as we saw truly the impacts of COVID-19 and the impact it was having on unemployment and hunger, specifically here in the city of Indianapolis. So we have partnered with LISC, and we have committed to $2.4 million to ensure that we can truly make an impact on the healthy food access and equity in an Indianapolis neighborhood. And I truly put more emphasis on the neighborhood portion because we want to make a difference in a neighborhood in the city of Indianapolis, because we know that neighborhoods impact communities and communities impact cities and therefore. So we are really excited to serve and really excited to be here. So thanks so much, Shelby.
Thank you, Natalie. Really thankful, as you'll see as we work through the information, that this is a complementary investment in that Anthem has been very strategic in investing in multiple areas of food access in Indianapolis. And so we just want to acknowledge that they are doing some investment in an immediate response to COVID and the impact of COVID, as well as this initiative, a longer term, deep investment in neighborhood to build some sustainability to address the long existing challenges related to food security. LISC engagement, obviously, we've been in the Indianapolis market since 1992, and we have invested over $30 million in Indianapolis neighborhoods in partnership with leveraging other investments. In 2019, we started focusing on investing in the social determinants of health, which really our investments had been in that space before, but really became interested and saw the need to address the health disparities that exist in Indianapolis. And the upstream way to address that is by, it is housing, it is education, it is access to food and commercial spaces and economic development. And so we really have doubled down on our focus of how do we improve those social determinants in order to influence health in Indianapolis communities. At that time, in 2019, we also developed a brand new strategic plan that really called for us to increase access to healthy food through funding and financing food systems. And most recently, we assisted with financing in both producers as well as distributors in Indianapolis, Cleo's Bodega in the near Northwest being one investment, as well as Uplift Produce in the Near East. Also critical to this initiative is our experience in community action planning. So we have supported the development and implementation of over 10 community action plans. Some of you may be familiar with those as QOLs or quality of life plans. We have other community action plans that we've implemented to help build economic development in specific communities in Indianapolis. But we really want to just share with you, we're excited to use this evidence-based strategy that helps build consensus and a collective voice around achieving a specific goal. Currently, we're serving as the backbone organization for Great Places 2020. It's a collective impact initiative that has leveraged over $266 million of investment in improving the quality of life and health with residents. And we're seeing that this initiative allows us to continue that similar work in Indianapolis. And another really great partner with the initiative is the City of Indianapolis. I'd like to acknowledge Malele Kennedy and offer her opportunity to share a little bit about the City of Indianapolis's engagement with this initiative.
Thanks, Shelby. And good evening, everyone. This initiative is a great opportunity for our city, and the mayor's office and our city county council have been working diligently, especially over the past year, around our food access and food security within the city. And this is very much in line with the ways that the city has been working to address these issues. This includes Mayor Hogsett and the council allocating funding for food access and security priorities within the city, as well as the Ordinance 337, which was approved in January of this year, establishing the Division of Community Nutrition and Food Policy, as well as the Community Food Access Coalition and our Advisory Commission. These are all things that we are doing in order to better engage with the community around our food system. And this is just the first step. Our goal is to become the hub of information gathering within the city around the food system, and also to ensure that all of these projects and priorities are sustainable within Indianapolis. So as we go through this process, I will be listening and taking notes, and really excited for this opportunity and finding out more about how we can take this deep dive into the equitable food access and insecurity needs of one specific community within Indianapolis. So thank you so much for this time, and I'll go on with this evening.
Thank you, Malele. And while we're here, Natalie and Malele are both co-chairs of the Initiative Advisory, and I'd also like to acknowledge Oljan Williams, the resident co-chair on the advisory. We are so thankful for the time that he's given to this initiative because community in the neighborhoods are the primary focus of this initiative, and the voice of the residents is critical to the development of any community action plan. We really felt like we needed quality leadership as the co-chair representing residents. So Oljan, would you like to speak and just say hello to this group?
I would like to say hello to everyone. Thank you for being with us. A great opportunity for a neighborhood or several neighborhoods in the future to help serve the residents. The question is, where is all the food? Where is it going?
Yep. So I'm so thankful. Oljan is always just a great reminder. At the end of the day, he wants to know, are people no longer going to be hungry? Are people going to have access to healthy foods in the community? And so I really appreciate his voice that really keeps on asking those foundational questions that he knows are the questions of residents. Will this initiative make a difference? And we certainly are going to make every effort possible that indeed, yes, it is going to make a difference in very tangible ways for the residents as we lean deeply into the voice of the community, the residents, as well as the stakeholders. So thank you, Oljan, for your time and your leadership and your voice.
You're welcome, and thank you.
So now that we are talking about what brought Anthem and LISC and the city of Indianapolis to the table, I want to share with you a visual that was, we started out with a lot of different iterations of it, but really wanted to try to capture the essence of this initiative. And with intentionality, you see neighborhoods as the largest circle, the center circle, the darkest one, the one where your focus goes to first. And then you also see LISC Indianapolis in a support position, as well as the city of Indianapolis in a support position. And then you see the support and funding from Anthem that's supporting all three of those circles. And so without their support and their funding, we wouldn't even have these three circles working together on an initiative like this. So we're really thankful for that. And we're going to dive more deeply into each of those circles, but want to also point out the bidirectional arrows that are here. We believe that there needs to be, throughout this initiative, communication that happens both ways, from the neighborhood to LISC, and LISC making sure that we're communicating openly and transparently with the neighborhood, the same with the city of Indianapolis, as well as these are also learning arrows, that there's something to be learned between each of these organizations going in both directions. And we also know that the information that comes from the neighborhood can also help inform LISC's strategy to raise additional funding to support what's happening in food access in community, as well as some policy changes that might need to happen with this through the city of Indianapolis or other advocacy channels. So we want to make sure that this remains a visual that's stuck in your mind, and that we're working hard for the entire 3 years of this initiative to make sure that the neighborhoods are central, LISC, the city, and Anthem are in support roles, and that we have a continuous communication and learning between each of those partners. Now that we've talked about the partners, I would like to just explore and share with you some foundational characteristics of this initiative. So it is a collective impact model in that there's a common agenda that we all are coming to the table. We want to increase equitable food access in Indianapolis neighborhoods. And another element of a collective impact is share measurement system. And so we're excited to partner with a community to identify a pathway through which they want to be evaluated or would find evaluation meaningful for them. And we'll tap into a little bit more information as we go through the slide deck, but that there would be with each partner a shared measurement system so that we can all see the progress and the celebrations and the areas where we need to leverage additional support throughout the initiative. As we shared before, continuous communication is critical throughout the initiative, And then there's shared responsibility, because we know the complexities of addressing food access and economic conditions such as poverty that exists, health in communities, health disparities between different resident and population groups. We know that no one organization or city entity can do justice to the need that exists or to leverage the assets that exist. And so we want to make sure that throughout the initiative, we are engaging multiple partners to help lift the load that exists as we move towards this common agenda. And then a collective impact model also has a backbone organization. So LISC is functioning as the backbone organization for the initiative. But when the neighborhood is selected, the convening agency, and we'll talk more about that, the convening agency will function as the backbone organization to really drive the movement forward of the development of the community action plan as well as the implementation. Earlier, I shared a little bit that this initiative and this investment is complementary to some other work that's being done related to food access and food security. So there's active investment in increasing SNAP and WIC enrollment in Indianapolis. Food Secure Indy is another project that's happening where the goal is that Indianapolis would be the first hunger-free city in the United States. And then the city's Food Commuter RAL 317 initiative is really, those are three of many projects that this initiative really works well in sharing more information between the two and helping to support the mutual goals that are shared between these projects. This initiative is also looking to have a comprehensive approach. So we are looking at addressing food security. One of the elements of food security is food access, and we'll get into the details of that. We want to look at food economy. And sometimes there's a little bit of fear of, oh, are we just going to cultivate the same food economy that's always existed, that's resulted in the disparity in food access and the food deserts that do exist in Indianapolis. And we're hoping and believing that this initiative will allow us to do some local food economy building that would really help dismantle the economies that have built segregation and access to food throughout the city. And we're looking to support and fund the development of food systems. So we'll talk a little bit more about what that means too. Equity is priority throughout this initiative. And when we are speaking of equity, we're speaking that all communities have the conditions needed to thrive. And so we also want to make sure that through this investment, how do we cultivate conditions that are needed in each neighborhood for that neighborhood to thrive, but also equity in our practice, how the initiative happens. Did residents feel like their voice was heard? Were stakeholders feeling like the investment was equitable? We'll also be looking for policymakers to find ways to execute some policy changes that increase equity in the Indianapolis community. We'll make sure that equity is priority in the decisions that we make. And then when we think of equity, we also think of power dynamics. And so we'll be checking that with some specific questions throughout the initiative that will really be important for us to be continually asking to make sure that equity is indeed not just something that we're talking about, but something that we're really leaning into and wanting to make a practice as part of this initiative. The initiative is also asset-based. No one wants to be approached according to the challenges and deficits. And while those are really real, if you read the RFP and the rationale portion, you would definitely see that there is need. And I don't think any of us really need data sets to say that there is significant need for equitable food access in Indianapolis. But as we approach the work that we do, we want to make sure that we are identifying the strengths of community, because every single community in Indianapolis has strengths and assets. And then we want to bring resources to those assets. And we also want to make sure that we're connecting the assets in a community to other community-based assets, as well as city, regional, state, and even national resources. to continue to cultivate and develop the assets in the community. This is a place-based initiative, so I want to be really clear about this. We're looking to focus on a specific geography in Indianapolis as compared to a citywide initiative. There have been a couple partners that do citywide work and super excited about it, and we say, yes, it would be really great that you would collaborate with a community or place-based group of folks who are wanting to develop a community action plan and implement it, and that you could be an implementation partner or contributor to that place-based initiative. So we are looking to develop local food systems in a specific geography. And that then will connecting that local food system to city, again, city, regional, state, and national resources. Place-based strategies really allow us to start talking about food sovereignty, and that's the right of each community to maintain and develop its own capacity to produce its basic foods, respecting culture and productive diversity. And so we believe that every community has a specific DNA that they and culture that they have the right to preserve. They have partnerships that exist, and we want to make sure that through this place-based initiative, we support that. This is a with initiative as compared to a to initiative or for initiative. I know Oljan commonly talks about parachuting in. The RFP that was released allows each community collective to self-select by putting together a proposal and submitting an application. You're saying, we do want to be involved. We are choosing to participate. That is a with initiative, that we are working with a neighborhood, not doing the work to a neighborhood. We're not doing the work for the neighborhood. We believe that the neighborhood has tremendous capacity to do this work. How do we bring resources? So we want to be responsive to the neighborhood. We want to come from a position of support. And we also want to make sure that the structures that do exist in the initiative are also agile to be, again, allow responsiveness and perhaps some changes as we're seeing. If there's a better way to meet a need than what we've identified, then let's change and let's respond. And then this is a capacity building initiative. We want to build sustainability in neighborhoods by building neighborhood leadership, whether it's residents and stakeholders. We want to build sustainability in the organizations, community-based organizations that are in each neighborhood. And we are also investing in developing systems within the neighborhood. So it might be communication pathways, neighborhood networking. It might be let's see. So even the local food system is, well, that's the whole purpose. We are addressing and investing in development of that system too. There's going to be impact evaluation along the way, and we want to make sure that it's both quantitative and qualitative in nature, that we are looking at some specific metrics and outcomes, as well as hearing the voice, hearing stories where we can hear how lives have been changed or how community has been changed. It's really important that we have regular feedback, both quantitative and qualitative. We are focusing on health impact in the community, so we'll be deploying some consultants to assist with a health impact assessment for the entirety of the 3-year initiative. But there are also other impacts of interest, specifically economic, environmental, and social impacts. We'll dive more deeply into that as we move forward, but want to make sure that we know that developing food systems and equitable food access has impact beyond health, though that is an important impact, and we're excited to see the many ways that a community can be influenced in positive ways through this initiative. We're looking for innovation. Just a couple of really quick examples. Community ownership models might be what a neighborhood decides that they want to do. We're looking for new innovative roles in the community that really have been shown to increase the voice and equitable access to resources. Community health workers is one of those roles. And then the intention of this initiative is to scale. So we are actively engaging additional funding partners. The current funding really is intended to focus on one community. We are looking to expand to 2, 3, or 4 communities in the Indianapolis area because we know that there are many communities that would really benefit from this, the community action plan. So again, going back to this visual, let's stop for just a minute and see if there are any questions so far. Any questions in the chat?
So Shelby, I have a question.
Sure. Hello, you have a question?
I do. What is the determination of success?
Sure, we'll dive into that for sure. I will tell you when we get into the impact portion. Really, the exciting thing is that there are determinants of success that perhaps the funder will have, and there's determinants of success that LISC will have and the city of Indianapolis will have. But the greatest determinant of success will come from the voice of the neighborhood. And so we will be sure that we're bringing in consultants and bringing all of the information resources that a neighborhood would want to access in order to help them with their determination of success, but we'll be looking at that from multiple partner perspectives. Any other questions at this point?
Shelby, this is Michael Howell at Cafe.
Hi, Michael.
I may have missed this early on, but can you talk about how much funding is available? I heard you say it's a 3-year initiative, and will there be multi-grants made? And what's kind of a range for a grant?
Sure. So this is an initiative, and we'll talk about that, and we can talk about as we go through the next couple slides where the funding will go. This is not an initiative where we have, X amount of dollars and we're deploying those X amount of dollars. This is funding for a process, similar to funding for a QL process, that it's an investment in a process that we're really thankful that Anthem says not just the planning portion, but the implementation of the process and of the plan that the neighborhood has. And so we will be focusing the lion's share of this in one neighborhood. So the RFP that was released is for you to come together as a collective voice in the neighborhood to say, here, we're interested in being selected as the investment community to facilitate a process of the development of a food-focused community action plan and the implementation of that. But we will talk about, as we go through the next couple slides, where the funding will go, for sure. All right, I'm going to go ahead and move forward with these other slides, and then we'll have moments to stop throughout with additional questions if there are no more in the chat.
There was one more.
Sure, go ahead.
All right. What would community ownership look like to LISC?
Sure. So community ownership models we can look at could be a food co-op. It could be, a worker ownership model. It could also then be determined. We would love to hear from the neighborhood of what their voice says about what community ownership is, shared ownership, and some really great literature out there to be read in the space of collective courage is one title where we're seeing as residents and those living in a neighborhood can come together and own elements in the community in order to increase economic mobility in the community. but super excited about that. But again, that's not LISC's decision as to whether or not that is what is best for a neighborhood. We certainly will have consultants that can cultivate and look at the assets and opportunities to offer that information to the neighborhood. But we know that any strategy that's successful is one that is fully embraced by those who it will be impacting the most. So the neighborhood circle. So the neighborhood will have a neighborhood food access and equity steering committee. So this is a group of neighborhood stakeholders that will be leading the development and implementation of the neighborhood food system plan. Okay. There will be a convener. So this is an organization that is most often the lead on a proposal like this, who will talk about some of the characteristics of a strong convener in the neighborhood. They are going to foster on-the-ground collaboration, coordinating some resources and help. They're also going to hire this community builder. So going back up to the neighborhood food access, the funding in this initiative allows for meeting costs, any marketing materials or website materials, the development of a website, because we want communication to be a really integral role in this initiative, making sure that we are open and transparent and celebrating. So that will be some funding that goes into that steering committee, just the facilitation of those meetings. The community builder is a fully funded role through the funding of this initiative. And then something that's really strategic here is the neighborhood food advocates. These are also funded through the initiative. So these are residents, business owners, organization, and staff leaders that are active in community engagement around the project. Traditionally, community action plans have really relied on really folks giving of their time and really wanting to be actively involved in their community. And there will be portions of that, but we know that community engagement is a lot of hard work, focused work. And so there is funding to fund actually staff roles to do that. The convening agency will help facilitate the hiring of those as well. As you saw, the convening agency is also the grants manager of the pass-through dollars for the implementation dollars for the initiative. And so it's really important that there's a strong convening agency. So we have seen an experience, not just in Indianapolis, but as well as throughout the United States, where LISC has a community action plan going, that the success or failure of a planning effort really hinges on the ability of a convening agency to organize and convene and implement. And so here are some characteristics that we're really looking for in that lead applicant or that convening agency. That they have a trusted community, they're a trusted community institution, they have buy-in from community partners and past history of executing community programs and collaborative community action planning. So some conveners who would put together a proposal for this might not have done community action planning, but if you have strong community programs and collaborations, it's definitely an agency that we certainly will consider for sure. That they have convening power, that there's a strong network of relationships. There's ability to cultivate more new relationships with residents, institutional stakeholders, and so there's a list of those there. And then making sure that this is an organization that can convene diverse groups of stakeholders. So we're really looking for this initiative to catalyze increased collaboration. And an organization that has operational excellence, that they have a capacity as well as the bandwidth to guide the implementation of a community action plan and the strategies. They need to have a strong balance sheet because the volume of investment really requires that, and the ability to responsibly manage finances and staff. So you saw that there's going to be significant staff increase, capacity staff for the organization so that there's great supervision, and then following established policy and procedures that reflect current best practice. We do want to note, because again, equity is a critical piece of this, that LISC is ready and eager, and there's funding in this funding for the initiative to facilitate capacity building for organizations that have growth potential in any of these areas. So it doesn't mean, hey, we don't have one of these and everything else looks really great about this proposal, but here's an area that we need some help with. We are eager and ready to help build some capacity in a promising convening agency. Moving to the circle of the city of Indianapolis, and you're going to see Malele spoke of the Division of Community Nutrition and Food Policy. That commission will then, you see the responsibilities listed there, really addressing racial inequity in the food system, creating inclusive mechanism to launch and coordinate food policies and programs, and then also leading the Indy Food Access Coalition. Then we see the Equitable Food Access Advisory, and we're going to talk about that more. That is the diverse advisory that will be reviewing each of the proposals and will be identifying the investment neighborhood of this initiative. The reason that we have this circle within the larger city of Indianapolis circle is that some of the organizations that are represented on the commission also are represented in the initiative advisory, as well as we want to make sure that this initiative is deeply engaged with the collective and collaborative efforts of the city. And we really believe that this is a model that could be beneficial to more than just one community. And we want to make sure that we are aligned with the efforts of the city of Indianapolis as well. And here is the list of your Equitable Food Access Initiative Advisory. We see the 3 co-chairs. Each organization, or there are, I think, 3 residents here, but their Anthem Foundation has 1 representative and Anthem Corporation has 1 representative. I will let you know, LISC, we're not listed on here because we are functioning as the backbone. We do not vote. We do not have, we facilitate the selection process, RFP and selection process, and that each of these organizations has 1 point of input as the selection process is reviewed. We wanted, again, in equity in practice. This is if you look at those who are here, we see those who have a lot of social capital or easily recognized names in the food system space. And then we have those who are functioning in program roles that are really critical voice in identifying promise in a proposal. And we have those who have been in the Indianapolis market for many, many, many years. And then some that are newer to the Indianapolis market that are bringing some fresh ideas and thoughts and practices from other communities that they've worked in. We worked in building racial, ethnic, and gender diversity, as well as some age diversity in this too. So we're really thankful for the time that this advisory is committing to the initiative. This is a group of folks as well that after the neighborhood is selected, they are open and eager and willing to advise on the development of the food system strategy and a community action plan. If you have interest in reaching out to them as you're developing your proposal, they are open to that as well. And then LISC Indianapolis, we're leading community engagement, coordinating efforts with community leaders and evaluators. We're leveraging existing grant and loan programs. So LISC is committed to helping with lending capital related to physical development for this initiative. So we're excited about that opportunity. This initiative also provides funding for LISC staff to engage because this is a systems and a comprehensive approach. So I'm leading the initiative, really excited about that role. We will be hiring a full-time food systems officer who will be engaging with the initiative as well and giving the vast majority of their time to this initiative and supporting the neighborhood, serving as liaison to the consultants and the neighborhoods, as well as the advisory and other partners. All of our program staff will be engaged because this has workforce development, education, economic development, real estate development, community to clinic connections. All of the LISC staff will be engaged at some way, at some time throughout the initiative in order to support the neighborhood. And then there's also funding for a plan facilitator, someone who just really loves convening and moving a community action plan forward, setting up a lot of meetings and follow-up notes and making sure communication is happening. Food systems experts, so this is their procures really expertise in to complement the local expertise in project selection. So they're going to be helping with that. And then data analysts. So those health impacts that we're looking for, someone who will help build an impact framework, an evaluation framework, but we're also looking for community food assessments to happen, health impact assessments to happen, just so that we can make sure that as decisions are made, we're evaluating what are the potential harmful impacts of a specific decision, as well as what opportunities can we leverage. And this information will be support information for the neighborhood. LISC, as I shared, we had identified in our strategic plan a desire and interest in investing more in food access. And so I just wanted to share the very specific goals that were established in 2019. So investing $2 million to increase access to fresh food, healthy eating, physical activity, quality healthcare. And then here's some specific strategies. The ones that are related to this initiative are highlighted there. So we're collaborating with health institutions like Anthem and other community-based organizations to improve health equity. We're expanding the community health worker model, might be something that's used in this initiative. And then we're looking to advocate for policies that promote urban food production, retail food markets, equitable public transportation, and then financing food access points, commercial kitchens, and those strategies that are identified within the neighborhood. Let's go ahead and stop again. Any questions in the chat before we move on to the call to proposal? Questions in the chat to start? Are we good to go on? Any other audible questions? Anyone have a spoken question they want to ask? All right, we'll dive forward to the call for collaborative proposal interest. So LISC is inviting Indianapolis-based nonprofit organizations who have interest in collaborating with other community partners to develop and implement a place-based community action plan that focuses on improving food security, increasing food access, and strengthening the local food economy. These are all elements of food justice to apply for the selection as the initiative's first investment community. That is the call for a collaborative proposal of interest. Again, we're going to go back to this image. So what do we do now that we have the partners and we have the funding and the proposals come through? What are you wanting to develop? So we're going to go into what is community action plan development and implementation. And so there are 5 different phases of that. And I'm also sharing with you, these are very tentative timelines, but will help you wrap your mind around about how much time it will take to do each of these elements. At the bottom of each of these next 3 slides really are some really critical questions that we want to make sure. And the royal we in this are those of us that are in the LISC, the City of Indianapolis, Anthem. How do we support the neighborhood in asking these questions regarding racial equity? And so we'll be going through those. So with the community action plan so we're starting the launch of that, and we already started that. And that started, I also want to do a shout out to Karen Shore, who's a consultant, Upstream Consulting, who's on this call, who worked tirelessly with the City of Indianapolis and LISC and Anthem to really bring together the vision of this initiative. So I say, Q3, Q4 of 2020. She might have a very different timeline as to when she actually started some of this work. But that's when LISC started to dive very deeply into relationship with Anthem and starting to cultivate this opportunity. So that's the first element, is identifying public and private resources for implementation early on. Traditionally, community action plans most often are funding just the planning portion. And sadly, what that results in is a list that you could send off to Santa Claus, and sadly, things would not happen without implementation dollars. And so we're really thankful for the mind of Anthem to say, we don't want to just have a plan in place, a plan, get a neighborhood excited about planning. Neighborhoods are so planned out. Let's make sure that we're funding the implementation of the strategies that they have identified. And then we want to make sure, for sustainability purposes, that the planning process is tied into a broader capacity building strategy. So we see that Anthem and the city and LISC have broader strategies, but we know that neighborhoods have broader strategies as well. Improving life expectancy, addressing the racial wealth and health gaps in the community, improving economic development. And we believe that this initiative, tied with some of those other broader capacity building strategies, is a way to have sustainability for this work. We want to make sure that, and here's the advisory. So we've already recruited an inclusive and balanced advisory committee that has residents and local leaders. And then we're looking for an agile approach. So please do not lose sight of that word. Again, we want to make sure that we have a solid structure, that we're moving forward, that has some evidence-based strategies behind it. And I know that that often is code for, oh, that means that we're going to be excluded from it. We want to make sure that we are using some strategies, but that we can go, how do we make sure that they are applicable to the community where we're investing? So we might have some shifts along the way, and we will be open to communicating that. And then we're also looking to identify strong organization to serve as the convening agency. Again, that's the selection process. We're not just selecting a convening agency, we're selecting a collaborative community, a collective community who's come together and said, we want to work on the development and implementation of an equitable food access plan. So the selection process, we are going to be done with that selection process in Q2. So by June 30th is the target date that the first investment community will be named. Racial equity questions. I'm not going to read every one of these, but again, encourage you when we release this slide deck that you all would go through and look. Is LISC, is the city, is Anthem engaging the community with genuine tasks, real resources, and true leadership? Does LISC and the city and Anthem have sufficient understanding of power dynamics to understand who currently holds power and what groups have been excluded from decision-making in the past? And then are we questioning preconceived ideas and biases towards the community in question? One point that really has come up is, might there be a tremendous disparity between what residents experience as success versus a funding organization? And all I can tell you is that residents want what's best for themselves. They want to be healthy. They want to have a community that is reflective of their culture. They want to have economic mobility and jobs and increased livable wage income. And so I think that we will have to work really hard to make sure that we're not believing any of these biases or preconceived ideas as we go into this initiative. And we will do checks along the way that will allow communication from the community to give us feedback. So once the neighborhood is selected, so there's community organizing, but actually as you develop your proposal, you should be doing some community organizing, and maybe some of you already have. So that's why I have Q2 on here, so that you're engaging diverse voices, including key systems influencers, that you're building community capacity to lead the planning process. So let's get our network of partners together. We want to be sure that we are helping deploy innovating engagement tools. So, come to a meeting is no longer working for many communities. So what are ways that we can support the neighborhood to engage residents and other stakeholders in creative ways? And then one thing that we can do, and we often do this, is utilize community events to really bring energy and momentum. So it might be a launch of, once the neighborhood has been selected, they are going to have a large event, whether it's virtual or socially distanced, where it's safe, to say, here's the stuff that we're working on. It might be around another community event that's happening. And we also want to then talk about this food access project that we're working on. Again, racial equity questions there, really important. And then once we're moving into the market analysis. So after we brought together a group, so that's, you've developed your neighborhood steering committee, and you've come together and you're excited to move forward, then the analysis of the community, the resources given to the neighborhood in the consultants to help look at data-driven approach. And so again, making sure that the data is meaningful for the community. It focuses on key opportunities, it's asset mapping, it's opportunity mapping, community food assessments. Then we're also looking at broader regional trends, because we know that the sustainability of a local food system often needs to be connected with regional trends, looking at linking local neighborhood assets to regional opportunities. And then making sure that we're helping to cultivate building partnerships as we see the information revealed about the neighborhood, the opportunities and the assets. How do we help build partnerships with other organizations? And so a portion of the implementation dollars will be to fund organizations and partnerships that will help implement the plan that the neighborhood eventually develops. And then we're wanting to make sure that community voices are reflected in the data findings. So that's that qualitative feedback, as well as making sure that we're not missing certain populations, races, ethnicities, those who have specific lived experience, that they're not missing in the data that we're pulling together, that will be used to inform the development of strategies. So Q3, Q4 is where we'll be doing market analysis, but we'll also be doing evaluation in Q1 and Q2, really to make sure that the neighborhood has as much information as they would like to have, but also we'll be doing evaluation throughout the entirety. So that's why I went 2022 plus. So if there's any point where we need additional information, data drawn for the community, we will certainly access funding from this grant in order to support that. So then we have strategy development. Now that we have information and we have our community, our neighborhood steering committee, and we know that the advisory is there ready to support, we're starting to identify strategy development. This can happen at the same time as some of the data analysis that is happening. So we're looking at Q3, Q4, Q1, and Q2. So depending on the investment neighborhood selected, some neighborhoods already have a portion of a community action plan focusing on food developed. And so it might not take an entire year or 9 months to complete a full comprehensive community action plan. So again, I just want to emphasize that these timeframes are tentative. We're just going off of traditionally, it would take, 9 months, sometimes 12 months to do a community action plan. We believe that with the additional resources from Anthem, we're able to have that go a little bit faster, but want to make sure that the strategy development, we give it plenty of opportunity to happen. So we're looking at resident input, We're looking at system influencers, and implementation partners are incorporated. We're looking also at priority projects that were any concrete scenario plans that they become priority, that we're looking really closely at how do we make sure that those happen, because those are ones that are critical as reflected by the voice of the community. And then planning is exhausting, and you get tired of we're doing planning, but is something actually happening? Okay. We want to make sure that we have early action projects and we have opportunities to build momentum. And so it is exhausting work. It's very inspiring work. But if we're just focusing on what we're eventually going to do and we don't cultivate some things we can do now, we really lose interest. And so this is a sustainability effort to make sure, and there are early implementation dollars in this funding that would allow some action to be happening as the full systems plan is being developed. And then we move into this phase, super excited, the implementation. So often this is launched through a rollout event. Again, a large community, bring as many community partners together to share the hard work that's done, the celebration, and then share this vision that is developed through the community action plan. And then also during this phase, implementing, making sure that we are cultivating accountability and support for implementing individual projects. So this is that shared responsibility, but then also making sure that as we move into this implementation phase that we are leveraging additional investment. Well, we are incredibly thankful for the generosity of Anthem and Anthem Foundation. We know that the need is far greater than this current investment. So we want to make sure that we are supporting the community, and we're using LISC and the City of Indianapolis and other partners to cultivate additional investment to carry out the action plan. That's why we have the 2023 plus sign. This is not intended, nor should we communicate that an entire food system in one community can be built in 3 years. That is not realistic. This is a very strong catalyst and will build deep roots into a growing tree of a local community food system. So I want to make sure that we are building sustainable communication throughout as well. Making sure that residents as well as implementation partners know what's happening throughout the initiative. All right, before we move into priorities, any questions about what we've talked about, the phases of a community action plan? We are about an hour and 5 minutes into this. Please feel free to get up, stretch, wiggle around, grab a drink. Any questions? I don't know, did I lose all of you? Hope not. Okay, so now we're looking into the initiative priorities. If you've reviewed the RFP, you've seen each of these. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because you all, will be looking at the RFP or if interested in the initiative, but wanted just to make sure that we are, there are many definitions of these terms and the priorities, and we wanted to make sure that we're starting from the same or similar understanding of each of these. So food security, looking at the components of food security, so food availability, food access, and food utilization. I think you'll see, I know you will see as you go through the application in the portal that we have questions that are specific to these, to each of these priorities. Food access. And here's some components of food access. So quantity, is there enough? And energy, quality, foods that provide all essential nutrients. And that's going to vary from resident to resident, depending on where their health status is. If they have diabetes, there's going to be some specific nutritional needs. If they're struggling through battling cancer, there's going to be some specific essential nutrients that they're going to need. So it's not a one size fits all. Food safety. The communities that are experiencing the greatest disparity or the greatest lack of access to food are communities that often have industrial waste as part of it. And so we want to make sure, if we're saying, yeah, let's do some urban gardens, but we're not sure about the quality of the soil and the quality of the produce that would come out of that soil, we're not increasing food access, right? So we want to make sure that we're addressing the safety of food as well. And then this element is really important, the cultural acceptability and preferences, foods that people like and that fit into their traditional or preferred diets. This is really critical, and it is something that we feel like the place-based strategy allows us to address this best, because the DNA of the community, the culture of the community can be more greatly preserved and supported as compared to a citywide initiative. Food economy. So we are looking for positive health impact, and we're also looking for economic mobility. And so here are the different elements of a food economy and some thoughts about food economy through this investment that we're looking to cultivate. So we have jobs and small businesses, and how do we ensure that dollars remain and circulate within local communities? We're looking at how do, that we can look at community-based jobs, that I don't need to get on a bus and go out to a regional space in order to have a family-sustaining employment. So many different elements of economy in this initiative that we're looking to support. And food systems, so what's happening in the community regarding production? What's happening in the community regarding transformation or processing? What might you want to see happen regarding distribution or access and consumption or waste and resource recovery? So looking at multiple components. We're not believing that any community is going to say, we have all of these. We're not looking for a proposal that says we are perfect at all of these. We're looking at to say, here's what we know, here's what we want, and we want help in building the capacity for those things. That is what this initiative is about. Health impact, so we want to make sure that we are looking at that. What is the effect or implications that a policy, program, or project, what are the implications of this initiative that it has on the condition of a person's body or a population's health and the extent to which it's free from or able to resist illness? But then this element, consideration of the distribution of those effects within the population, is critical to health equity. So there are very specific questions about potential positive impacts and who might experience those positive impacts, as well as negative impacts and who might experience those as a result of this investment. And we're also looking for environmental, economic, social impacts, and it might be more education impacts. These are just some that we wanted to start looking at as we are engaging with you through the proposal process. In collaboration, if there's anything that you've heard from me this evening, I hope it's that this is a process that we are needing to partner with others within our local geography that we're wanting to address, as well as our maybe neighboring geographies. We might have some partnerships there, city, regional, state, national. And here's the continuum of collaboration. So you might identify partners that are just communication partners. Hey, we've got this going on. I'm going to send a flyer over to you. Cooperation partners, they support one another's activity, but there's no formal agreement in place. Yay, good job, love, we'll come and attend. That's exciting. We'll do some referrals perhaps. coordination, partners that are engaging in mutual projects and initiatives, are modifying their own activities to benefit the whole. And then collective impact, that there's a formal agreement. Partners work towards developing enhanced capacity to achieve a shared vision. This is a collective impact. This investment is intended to be that. But as you go through your proposal, you might have some partners that are anywhere on this continuum. Again, being mindful of locale. It might be neighborhood-based, citywide, regional, state, or national partnerships. But really important, we would love to see new partnerships. We would like to see long-term partnerships deepened, more strategy behind those as well. So now we're looking at the proposal evaluation criteria. So we're looking at that, this is in the RFP, that your proposal addresses the initiative's priorities. We chose to develop an application instead of saying, hey, write us a 5-page concept paper and address each of these things. We really wanted, for a variety of reasons, make sure that we're not funding great grant writing, right? Because great grant writing it's important, it certainly is, but we want to fund promising, visionary, collective, collaborative food systems. And so we want to make sure that the application was accessible to everyone. And then we also wanted to make sure that since there's going to be the advisory reviewing the applications, that we could, as objectively as possible, review these applications from one to another in order to make the selection of the first investment community. Also allows us to evaluate, are there some promising initiatives or projects or vision that we can use a portion of this funding to catalyze or build capacity, even if it's in a community that might not be the first investment community, but how can we leverage additional resources to really build momentum in a neighborhood that maybe could leverage a larger investment that would bring a full community action plan to food systems. So there's another thing is that we can, that's the agile portion of this initiative. So make sure as you go through and you answer the questions, we'd like to see that you're addressing the initiative's priorities. We're looking at communicates a food systems approach, clearly identifies collaboration and implementation partners, as we shared that the lift is heavy. Let's share the responsibility and the expertise of the other assets throughout your community. It reflects the voice of the residents and other community stakeholders. It establishes the convener's strength. It links proposed strategies to other quality of life or health equity issues. It doesn't have to be a QOL or a Great Places plan, but if you have some focused efforts in your community, how might there be a link between other initiatives? Remember, that's that engaging this work to a broader strategy to build sustainability. And then it leverages identified assets and to address the need. Again, that strengths-based approach, we believe every community has great assets. Identifies capacity building opportunities. Hey, we don't have a solution for this portion. Here's a couple ideas. Please, we encourage you to communicate that way. And so then we can identify how can we support. And then proposes a pipeline of physical development to leverage the lending capital that's been committed to this. This is something that we know that built structures and the development of physical space and infrastructure is really important to food system development. And so I'm thinking about either what's currently happening or what you might have happen or want to have happen in physical development. And then it demonstrates a commitment to improving racial equity. This is non-negotiable. And here's your RFP and selection process timeline. So we'll go all the way back to March. We brought together the project and the initiative advisory in March, and then the community announcement was made. We then had the INRC RFP training. The RFP release tonight is the 15th, the initiative info community meeting. So your RFPs are due at 5 p.m. on the 21st of May. We will put together packets. If there's any questions or something, outliers, as we review that, we'll reach out to you and say, hey, didn't see an answer here or had a question about this. We'll try to clean some of that up to make sure that as we hand those off to the advisory to be reviewed, that we have as much information as you are really wanting to share. And then on the week of the 7th, after the advisory has an opportunity to review the proposals, we will convene that advisory for a selection of the top 3. And I say the top 3, again, wanting to be agile. If there are 5 amazing proposals that we really want to hear from in an interview, we'll say 5 and we'll get them scheduled. So we want to let you know that that would be the next phase. Is we're looking at the 14th, 15th, and 16th that a subcommittee would do interviews. And then we're going to reconvene the advisory for final selection, looking at tentatively the 22nd. And then by June 30th, we hope to make a broad community announcement of the first investment neighborhood. And then here's support information. This is at the bottom of your RFP as well. Please reach out with any questions. INRC, we're thankful that they are partnering with us and are available to help with any technical assistance with your proposals or collaboration as well. The April 1st training is available on our website. You can access it there. Any technical questions about the application portal, Megan Bullet is who you would want to reach out to, and any questions that you might have related to the initiative, I am happy to entertain with you. All right. Whoops. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and let's see if there are any questions. So interested in hearing from each of you. Perhaps there's something here. Emily, any questions?
No, I don't think so. I saw.
Okay. Anyone want to ask a question? Comments, thoughts?
I do. I'm driving.
Sure.
Can you have a co-application with 2 organizations?
We're hopeful that all of the applications would have multiple partners contributing to it. So here's a vision that we can cast for you that I'm hearing, this is Counselor Jackson, so that you would say, hey, let's have a 10, 15 partners on the Far East Side get together and let's review this application and go, who's doing what, where? And let's start thinking about the answers to this in a collective way and who would like to do what and where. You might strike MOUs with each other to say, hey, if we move this plan forward, here's our commitment to the initiative. I know INRC shared a couple worksheets that could be used to kind of just put some language around relationships in a collective partnership. And so there would be one lead agency, right, that would be the convening agency. We want to make sure that we identify that, but that it would be a genuinely collective approach, identifying all of those partners in the initiative.
Thank you for that clarification. Can you have 2 co-lead convening agencies? You just want one?
Well, ideally it would be one. I think we could probably entertain 2 and maybe putting some support as to why you were going to go 2. You'd have to consider which one would be hiring the community builder and which one would be physical agent and grants manager. So you would have to work that out and somehow explain that through there. We certainly don't want to dictate, but both agencies would have to, work in the eligibility space as well. But this is intended to be a collaborative proposal, identifying here would be the convening agency that would hire the staff, and maybe this would be an agency that would grants manage or physical agent. Just identify that.
Sounds good. May I ask a follow-up question, please?
Sure, yeah.
For the fiscal agent, do they have to have actual audits, third-party audits, or is audit reviews acceptable?
So and this is a LISC national requirement that you would, for the volume of this investment, would require that you have audits from a certified accountant. Yep.
Thank you so much.
Yep.
You gave a great presentation tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. We might give you 35 minutes back to your evening, but I'm so open to use every minute that you might have for questions, comments.
Hey, Shelby, this is Maury. I think you said this, but you're going to share the slide deck and the tape recording of tonight, right? Because
Yes.
Some people couldn't see the slides.
Yes, I'm happy to do that.
Okay, thanks.
As you have your groups get together and as you convene to review, so a couple things that we have done there, people felt like, oh, as we go into the portal, there are a lot of questions, and we ask those very intentionally, but creating a Word document. Maury has a Word document that we created that he can send to you if you want to just have it, in a Word document and not be into the portal, and to do some planning with that. Happy to do that. I can send it out to you as well. And, encouraging you again to get together a large group as key partners in your community. Might be, your local urban garden nonprofit. It might be some food-based small businesses. It might be your neighborhood food champions that are currently working or past neighborhood food champions. They will want to engage with this. So reaching out to them would be really great. Also, your mayor's neighborhood advocate, really engaging them in the process would be helpful too. Those who are reaching out to communities that maybe have been marginalized because of language barriers or transportation barriers or technology barriers. How are you going to reach out to those community partners? And so being strategic about who you bring together for that. So those are just a couple of engagement ideas.
Shelby, Michael Howe at Cafe.
Hi, Mike.
So if we, for example, a few of the folks who are on the advisory council, I'll just use an example like Sharana Moore with Lawrence Community Gardens. Mm-hmm. If we were working on this project and we wanted her to be a partner, is there a conflict that she's on the advisory council and we would not be able to partner with her, or how does that work?
Yeah, so it's a really great question. We certainly do not want those who are on advisory to be leading any of the proposals. We worked really hard. This was a challenge. We worked really hard to have folks on this advisory that are doing the work, but that are not committed to one geography, right? And so Sharana might be asked by 5 different partners to be an implementation partner, right? And so we looked at that and to go, okay, a lead, if someone's identified, this is someone we'd like to look to, then we talked about that if there was a proposal that came up and this partner was listed as a key partner, that they would then excuse themselves from that process. So we're still working through that in the advisory because, for instance, someone might say, hey, we want to have neighborhood food champions be part of the initiative. I just encourage you to do that. Well, that is a city program, right? So how do we make sure that we're doing checks and balances? The thing that we did see is that all of the advisory members have opportunity to be a collaborative partner or some partner in the continuum of collaboration for multiple projects. And so it's something that we are really keeping an eye on, that there would be no benefit or increased benefit to one community over another, And yet we still want to have those who are practitioners and actively doing the work to be part of the selection process. Any further questions?
Well, Shelby, this is Michael at Midtown. I just wanted to thank you for a very comprehensive review of this process, all the information I think anyone could have hoped for. Hopefully everybody can connect to it after the fact. And I know our community conversations are deep and ongoing, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Michael. I know that just a couple of questions or thoughts that have come through a little bit. And I think, Michael, how you asked at the very beginning, like how many awards were going to happen and how much money. And so I hope that this presentation clarified we are investing in a process in the development, in the catalyzing of multiple projects, right? We're starting with the investment in one neighborhood, the first neighborhood we keep saying, and we are really focusing on that, but there will be multiple projects within that neighborhood that receive the funding through the implementation process. And so hopefully we've clarified that. Some people are like, oh, we have a grocery store we want in our neighborhood. We could leverage all $2.45 million. That's not what this initiative is focusing on. The grocery store should absolutely be part of your proposal. It should absolutely be a key priority if that's what your neighborhood has identified. If you're, put together the plan and say, so then we can look at how do we bring capacity to have that idea, that goal become reality in your neighborhood.
I think that's very helpful to understand, Shelby. I think a lot of communities are in different places with their conversations and their work. Understanding this is a funding opportunity for process, I think we all need to take note of the process and the length of it and the scope of it. And it's not just about a physical institution. And this was very helpful in understanding that.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is LaShawna Triplett, and I have a grassroots organization in the Martindale Brightwood area. And I just wanted to say, from a nonprofit grassroots level, I appreciate, the collaboration efforts to include different tiers of organizations to come together to be able to serve as catalysts to, decreasing the food insecurity. So, thank you for having that tier approach in the proposal, which allows all of us to collaborate together.
Ms. Triplett, thank you for those comments. And that is a really important element of this. And so, we want to be good stewards to our funder, as well as mostly to the neighborhood, that this initiative has the impact that the volume of investment really hopes that it would have. But we also want to make sure that there's funding that's accessible in grants or sub-grants from the convening agency that don't have to go through the very rigorous show me your audits, that it really allows those dollars to get into the grassroots organizations in the communities. And then how do we, if you're wanting to, as a grassroots nonprofit, to build that capacity to be able to leverage larger investments like we're looking for in those stronger agencies, there are dollars in this grant that would help us to do that with you. So we're excited about that. And so we're hoping that this brings a diverse investment, that there are some organizations that maybe haven't had grants to move and grow their nonprofit work or their small business work or entrepreneurial work through this initiative.
Is there a way with the organizations that are applying for the grants, is there like a list or something that we could pull from or collaborate? Like in my area, Gleaners is on the, Midwest, and Gleaners are not in my catch area, right? So how would a grassroots organization like myself be able to link with, know who the collaborative partners are to help Capitol Bill, like we started a community garden last year, increase the need with the direct service on top of partnering with a larger organization as well.
Sure. So, I would start with your community-based organizations or your anchor institutions. So if you're in a community, so you're in Martindale Brightwood is what I'm understanding, correct?
Yeah,
Yep.
yes, ma'am.
Yep.
Yes.
So you're in the Northeast corridor. So you do have a quality of life convener at United Northeast Community Development Corporation, and Ashley Gervitz, who is working in that. You also have Edna Martin Christian Center. So the key partners in that community, I know Eskenazi is moving into that space. Cook Medical is also working in that space. You have Marion County Public Health Department, the YMCA, you have Elephant Gardens, you have Wall Street Grocery, you have a broad group of folks who are working in the food space that just reaching out to, you can always start with a convening agency that's already working on a quality of life plan or a community action plan. We are encouraging them to be bringing partners together, but it doesn't have to be that. It could be an anchor institution like a university or school or a hospital or something like that. So, but just starting with any framework that already exists in your neighborhood, reaching out. You could also reach out to a local community development corporation or community service agency and start there and go, hey, I'm interested. How do we get this moving forward? If there's a large managed property group, that would also be somebody who you would want to invite in. If there is a regular convening of residents, a roundtable or neighborhood associations, you would want to reach out to them as well and say, hey, we want to get a collaboration together for this initiative. Those are some strategies.
Thank you. I'll start with Ashley. She always does a real good job of bringing groups together. So you could have stopped there. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, she's a great community connector for sure.
Hi, Shelby. This is Liz Joss with IU Health Foundation. Thank you for this very great and detailed presentation. I hope my ears are catching it all. If we have a project that's already underway or in the works, and we have a lot of partners and it's targeted to, in a specific neighborhood, and then can we add on this food equity component, or does it have to be a brand new initiative, brand new partners?
Yeah, it doesn't have to be a brand new initiative or brand new partners. So I'm guessing, as you're looking, I'm trying to recall what initiative you're speaking of. Maybe it's not public. If it's a grocery or if it's, corner markets, do know that that is one element of a food system. So it might be, rather than, hey, we're adding this on to what we're already doing, it might be, no, what we're already doing actually is one piece of a broader food-focused community action plan. And really that's where we see that more often. We see some communities that have quite a bit going on, but this brings the opportunity to go, okay, how do we get producers in our neighborhood and employment opportunities and workforce developers? Like, those are the growers, right? How do we food process? So could we process the food that's being grown in our neighborhood and build connections between those producers to the processors? And then we can go, oh goodness, distribution. Can we do procurement with the local school or the local, the local corner markets, or procurement with the local food businesses in the neighborhood? So making connections even as part of developing this plan. So I would suggest that it's probably you have an initiative, and that this would be one piece of this initiative would allow that to be one piece of your community action plan.
That's exactly what I was hoping you would say. Yeah. Thank you.
Yep. And that's the part where I talked about the timeline of a community action plan might vary from one neighborhood to the next, because there might be one neighborhood that has like, hey, we already have 7 strategies going, or we have 22 strategies going. You know, we just need to deepen or expand or look at a whole system or connect to, you know, city or regional or state resources. Or we need to improve our collaboration. Hey, we're kind of the only one doing this, and we need to improve our collaboration. And that might be part of the work too. Great questions. Appreciate your engagement. Any other questions, thoughts, comments? So I don't want to belabor the time. I'd love to give you all time back. I do want to just stop and just say, again, you know, really appreciate the voice of residents, Olgen, other residents that have said, is this initiative going to address people being hungry? Are people going to have access to the food that they know is healthy and that they want to eat? And the goal is yes, but we do know, again, this is the first, it's a strategy that is effective in one area. It's something that absolutely can be scaled to other neighborhoods. We've seen it work. We're excited for that with additional investment. And really at the end of the day, you know, numbers and data sets aren't what we're hoping for, that we'll use them as instruments, but that folks will experience, I have employment that sustains my family within my neighborhood, and it allows me to then access food and grow food that we want, and that we have access to cooking, and it's reflective of our culture, and it's affordable, and my kids are eating food that I grew when I was at work, or, you know, and really looking at food justice and building an economy. We cannot separate health from food access, from economic conditions such as poverty. They cannot be separated, or racism. So we want to make sure that we're working really hard to understand that they cannot be separated. So we need to address all of them as best we can with this initiative. We are not a perfect organization. It's not a perfect initiative. Therefore, we want to make sure that we're opening conversation regularly to receive feedback, so that we can continue to grow, and that we can continue to meet the needs of the community that we're hoping to support. So we're excited to partner with each of you. Do know that these proposals, if you are a community that is not selected as the first investment community, does not mean that we're not going to invest, or it's over, you wasted all that time. First of all, I would just applaud the collaboration that you brought together to get that proposal, that you started to have a collective thought about a comprehensive food system, and that you've identified projects that we could then take a look. All of the advisory can go, hey, do we have capacity to build, you know, can we leverage additional funds? Can we fundraise for some capacity building projects in other parts of the city? Or that we have another funder that wants to come in and say, let's do the same in a different neighborhood. And then you have a proposal already there. So it's work that you can use for this proposal, but we hope that it's also work in collaboration that you can use to move this conversation forward, and the work forward as best you can in your community. So we hope that in answering the questions, it is not in vain, even if the selection may or may not be your community, that it's going to be work that will help with planning for the future in your communities. So with that, I say good evening. We will post this recording in the next day or so. I'll see a couple of things. Very inspirational. I hope so. I hope that we are inspirational. You all inspire us in the work for sure. You guys are doing the hard work, and we just want to see how we can support you. So we will get this posted, share it with any of your community partners. please reach out with any questions. We're really, really wanting to give you as much information as you need to be successful through the process. All right. Thank you all very much for your time and have a great evening. Take care.